There is a basket by my washing machine right now that most women would carry straight to the bin without a second look. 3 of my granddaughter's school aprons are in it, a work shirt of my husband's from 2 days ago, and the tablecloth from Sunday dinner folded across the top. Coffee down the front of one apron. Grass from the back field worked into the knee of another. Grease from the fryer pan, running in a long streak across the tablecloth from one end near to the other. To someone looking from the outside, those are ruined things, things headed to the rag pile. To me, they are 20 minutes of work. I have kept house for 41 years. My mother kept house before me for 40 years before that, and her mother before her. In all that time, across all 3 of our households, I could not count the stains if I tried. Children and gardens and kitchens and animals produce staining the way a field produces weeds, without asking and without stopping. What I do know is that none of us has ever bought a bottle with a printed label to deal with a stain. Not because we could not, because we did not need to. 2 things in the pantry, the same 2 things sitting in your kitchen right now, handled almost everything that came through the door. The question was never which product to buy. The question was whether you knew how to use what you already had. I want to tell you one story before I show you the method, because it is the story that made me understand how important this kind of knowledge is to hold on to. My mother made a white tablecloth for my brother's wedding. She embroidered it herself, over a whole winter, small forget-me-nots along the border. His wife's initials worked into the corner. At the wedding supper, someone tipped a glass of red wine across it from one end near to the other. The bride's mother said it was a loss. That red wine on white linen was a thing you could not undo. My mother said nothing. She folded the tablecloth when the evening was over, brought it home, and had it cleaned before the week was out. My sister-in-law has set that tablecloth on her holiday table every Christmas for 30 years. The forget-me-nots are still there. The embroidery is still there. The wine is not. What my mother did that evening is what I am going to show you today. 2 things from the pantry, used in the right order, in the right way. That is all it was. I know that sounds like less than you were expecting. People come looking for the new thing, the product they have not tried yet, the miracle in a bottle with a long list of what it removes. And I understand that instinct, because we have been trained for a long time to believe that solutions have to be complicated to be real. But most of the best household knowledge is simple, and it is simple because it was figured out by women who had no time for anything that did not work. The thing that works tends to be the thing that has been working for 100 years. You just have to know it. If this is the kind of plain, useful help you came looking for, go ahead and subscribe. And tell me down in the comments what state you are watching from. The 2 things are white vinegar and baking soda. You have seen this suggested before, I am certain of it. Someone pours vinegar on a stain, shakes baking soda over the top, watches it fizz, and calls it a method. And I understand why that version gets passed around, because it does something. It makes a satisfying reaction. It looks powerful. But the fizzing is not the cleaning, and understanding why is what separates a method that actually works from one that leaves you with a wet fabric and a stain still in it. White vinegar is an acid, baking soda is an alkaline. When you combine an acid and an alkaline together at the same moment, they do not become a stronger cleaner. They become a weaker one. They work against each other until both are spent. The bubbling is the acid, and the alkaline meeting and canceling out, and by the time the reaction stops, what you have left is mostly water and a small amount of salt. Those are not harmful, but they are not what lifted the red wine out of my mother's embroidered linen, and they are not what is going to take the grass out of my granddaughter's apron today. My grandmother used them as a 2-step, one following the other, at the right moment, each doing what the other one cannot do alone. That sequence is the whole method, and nobody will put it on a label and sell it to you, because there is no money in 2 cheap things from a shelf used in a particular order. I remember watching my grandmother at her basin when I was young, maybe 7 or 8 years old. I asked her once why she did not just pour both things on at the same time and save a step. She dried her hands on her apron and looked at me and said that was like asking the bread to rise before you added the flour. Each thing has its time, and if you give it its time, you will get what you are after. If you do not, you will be disappointed, and you will think the method failed, when the truth is only that you were in a hurry. She was not a woman who said more than she needed to say, and that was about as much as she ever explained anything. But I have thought of it every time I stood at a basin since. The baking soda goes first. Every time, with every stain, the baking soda is your first step. Baking soda is mildly alkaline, and that alkalinity loosens the grip a stain has taken on the fibers of a fabric. A stain bonds to thread, works itself down into the weave, and the baking soda breaks that bond or weakens it enough that what comes after can finish the work. When you wet the baking soda to a thick paste, just enough water to hold it together and keep it from running, it also becomes a gentle mechanical agent, soft enough not to damage the thread, firm enough to lift material up from the weave rather than driving it deeper. You press that paste into the stain. You work it in with your fingers or the back of a spoon so it gets down into the fiber and not just sitting on the surface. Then you leave it. 15 minutes for a fresh stain. 25 to 30 minutes for anything that has dried or been sitting for more than a day. The paste needs that time. Pulling it off early is the single most common reason this method fails for people who try it once and then say it does not work. The white vinegar comes after, once the baking soda has had its time. You pour a small amount of white vinegar directly over the paste still sitting on the fabric. The fizzing starts now, and now it is doing something useful. The baking soda has already loosened the stain's hold on the fiber. The acid of the vinegar meeting the remaining alkaline of the baking soda creates small carbon dioxide bubbles, and those bubbles carry the loosened stain material physically upward and out of the thread. The stain was already detached. The fizzing finishes the removal. After the reaction stops, you rinse with cold water. Cold water always, not warm and never hot, because heat bonds a stain into fabric in a way that nothing afterward can fully undo. Cold rinse, then wash the piece in your machine or by hand as you normally would. Baking soda paste, sit time, white vinegar, cold rinse, wash. That is the complete method. My grandmother learned it from her mother, who kept a household of 10 children, did her washing with water heated on a wood stove, and made her own soap. Those women were not precious about fabric. If something could be saved, you saved it, because replacement cost too much and took too long. The knowledge of how to save things was useful and immediate and passed down with care. As a result, now I want to walk you through the most common stains and how the method shifts for each one, because the adjustments are small, but they matter. If this is doing you some good so far, subscribe and turn on notifications so the next one finds you when it is ready. Grass stains come through the door of this house every week when the grandchildren visit. In summer, it is closer to every day. A grass stain is both a protein and a pigment bonded together into the fiber, and the paste handles the protein portion while the vinegar step handles the rest. Press the paste in firmly. Do not just lay it on the surface, and let it sit for a full 20 minutes on a fresh stain. The vinegar and a cold wash will take it. If the stain has dried and been sitting, add 1 small drop of plain dish soap to the baking soda paste before you apply it. The soap gives extra lift on the protein that a dried stain needs. My mother kept a dry cake of hard soap near the washing basin for exactly this. Dish soap today does the same work. Grease stains cause the most frustration because of how they behave in the machine. You treat a fresh grease spot, run it through a normal wash, pull it out looking almost clean, and then it dries and there is a dark ring where the grease was. That ring means the washing pushed the grease sideways in the fiber rather than pulling it out. The fix is a dry step before anything wet touches the fabric at all. Cover the grease stain with a generous layer of dry baking soda and leave it for 30 to 45 minutes. The dry powder draws the oil up out of the thread. Before baking soda was commonly sold, women kept cornmeal for this same purpose, and it worked the same way. When you brush off the powder, you can often see the oil has transferred into it. Then make a fresh paste with a drop of dish soap added and work it into the stain, the vinegar, the cold rinse, the wash. A grease stain treated with the dry step comes out clean. The same stain put into a warm machine while still wet becomes a permanent ring. Berry stains arrive every summer when the picking is on and the children eat as they carry. Because berries are acidic themselves, the vinegar step comes first here rather than after the paste. Pour white vinegar directly onto the fresh berry stain and let it sit for 5 minutes before you apply anything else. The acid-on-acid approach sets the berry color against itself before the baking soda comes in. After the vinegar has had its 5 minutes, apply the baking soda paste over the still damp spot. The fizzing will start immediately, right in the fabric where the two meet. And that reaction happening inside the fiber is part of what lifts the color. Cold rinse, then wash. A blueberry stain on white cotton, even one that looks as though it has gone all the way through the cloth, will come out of a fresh treatment almost entirely. Tomato stains share some of the berry's acidity, but carry more oil in them, especially if the sauce was cooked in fat, and so the treatment combines both the berry approach and the grease approach. Blot off as much of the sauce as you can first with a dry cloth, then vinegar directly on the stain for 5 minutes. Then baking soda paste with a single small drop of dish soap mixed in to address the oil. Vinegar rinse, cold water, wash. Tomato stains that have dried sometimes leave a faint yellow shadow even after the red color lifts. That yellow comes from the acids in the tomato breaking down over time and is a different kind of staining. For the shadow, a second treatment using just the baking soda paste with no soap, left for 30 minutes before the vinegar, will usually clear it. Blood stains are the ones people ruin most often before they ever begin to treat them, because the instinct says hard cleaning means hot water. Heat is precisely wrong for blood. Blood is a protein, and heat bonds protein into fiber permanently. A blood-stained piece that goes into a hot machine wash is largely decided. Nothing after that point will fully reverse it. Cold water is the rule, and you start immediately if you can. Rinse with cold water until the water runs mostly clear, then the baking soda paste, then the vinegar, then another cold rinse, then a cold wash. If the blood dried before you reached it, wet the area with cold water and let it soften for a few minutes before applying the paste. A stain that simply dried without being washed warm is often still fully treatable. One that went through a hot cycle has been set, and while treatment may lighten it, full removal is not always possible. Coffee and tea are tannin stains, and white vinegar does well against tannins because of its acidity. For a fresh spill, start with vinegar directly on the stain before the paste. Blot with a cloth dampened in vinegar. Blot only, from the outer edge of the stain toward the center, and never rub. Rubbing spreads the stain and drives it deeper into the fiber. After you have lifted what you can by blotting, apply the baking soda paste. Let the fizzing work, cold rinse, and wash. For a dried coffee ring that has been sitting for days, the paste goes first with a longer sit, 30 minutes at least, before the vinegar. The collar ring is worth its own time because it is not a single stain the way coffee or grass is. It is an accumulation, layers of body oil and sweat and minerals built up over many wearings until they bond into the fiber and a regular machine cycle cannot reach them. The yellowing on the inside of a shirt collar or the underarm of a cotton blouse falls into this category. For this, you make the paste differently. Mix baking soda and white vinegar together in a small dish and stir it until the active fizzing settles and you have something the consistency of wet plaster. Press that into the yellowed area and leave it for 30 minutes. Because the two materials have already reacted together in the dish, the paste will not foam on the fabric, but the alkalinity remaining in the baking soda continues working on the mineral buildup underneath. Rinse and wash. For a collar that has been yellowing through a whole season of wear, do this twice with a day between treatments. The shirt that looked as though it belonged in the rag pile will come back. Mud comes with one rule above all others: do not touch it while it is wet. Let the mud dry completely before you do anything. A child coming in from the field covered to the knee is hard to leave alone, but a wet mud stain worked into wet fabric is far harder to lift than a dried one. The clay in mud bonds to fiber under wet pressure. Dry, it sits on the surface and crumbles. Let it dry. Brush off as much as you can with a stiff brush or the edge of a dull knife. Then the baking soda paste. Then the vinegar. Cold rinse. Wash. What looked like a catastrophe when it walked through the door is often mostly gone just from the drying and brushing, before you have applied anything at all. There are a few things this method does not handle, and I would rather tell you plainly than have you disappointed. White vinegar can affect the color of some dyed fabrics, especially bright reds and certain dark blues that were not made to be color fast. Before you apply vinegar anywhere visible on a colored piece, test it first on a hidden seam or the inside of a hem. The method I have described is built for cotton, linen, and everyday cotton blends. Silk and wool need gentler handling and different care altogether. Ballpoint pen ink and certain chemical stains will not yield to this method. What it does handle is most of what daily life puts on fabric in a working household, and that covers a wide range. I think often about why this kind of knowledge stopped being taught. Nobody made a decision to stop passing it down. What happened is that around the middle of the last century, the stores began selling a product for every household problem, and those products worked well enough that the older knowledge stopped feeling necessary in the way it once was. Each new bottle of stain spray that came to market was one more thing a daughter did not need to learn standing beside her mother. The women who held this knowledge passed it along by doing it together, by showing while standing at the same basin, and when the doing together stopped, the showing stopped with it. The products multiplied and the understanding thinned. The cleaning still got done, but the knowing moved from the person to the label on the bottle. A label is a poor substitute for a grandmother who has washed 40 years of stains out of fabric by hand and knows exactly what each stain needs. There is also the matter of what is in those bottles. Most commercial stain treatments contain ingredients I would not want on my children's clothing or rinse down into my garden soil. That may not concern everyone, and I am not here to argue the point. But in this household, what touches our food and what touches our drinking water matters to us. White vinegar is a food ingredient. Baking soda is a food ingredient. I do not have to wonder what they are doing to the fiber or where they end up after the rinse. That is worth something to me, and it may be worth something to you as well if you have been paying attention to what goes into the products you keep under your sink. The knowledge of what a pantry can do is not a small thing. It is a kind of independence that is harder to come by than it used to be, and easier to lose than most people realize until they need it. My mother had a saying for times when she was teaching me something like this. She would say that a woman who knows her pantry needs very little else. She did not mean it in a grand way. She meant it the way you mean something you have found true through years of use, the way a practical thing sounds when someone who has lived by it says it out loud. 2 inexpensive things from a shelf, used in the right order, in the right way, will handle what daily life throws at your fabric. That tablecloth my sister-in-law still brings out every Christmas is proof enough for me. Before you go, I want to ask you to do one thing. Find the piece of fabric you put aside because you decided the stain had won, the shirt in the back of the wardrobe, the tablecloth put away after a holiday dinner went badly 3 years ago. Try this on it. Paste, sit time, vinegar, cold rinse, wash. If it does not work, you have lost 20 minutes and you cut it into rags with a clear mind. But I think in most cases it will work and the piece will come back. Tell me in the comments what stain you are working with and what piece you had given up on. I read through the comments when I can, and they help me understand what to talk about next. There is a long list of things my mother and grandmother handed to me, and what comes in from you tells me where to start. Thank you for sitting with me through this. Subscribe if you want more old household wisdom, and the next video is right there on your screen when you are ready for it.